Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Before we get into today's show, I want to thank our sponsor, Zai, boldly transforming the future of financial services with a suite of embedded products and services, empowering businesses to move funds with ease and enable multiple payment workflows. Check out Zai at hellozai.com. For now, let's get into today's episode. Today's book is designed to bring you simple, sound, and practical tools to awaken your creativity at work, even if you don't think you are creative. No fluff or theories, no bull or fillers. Our guest draws on a lifetime of success in business to give you real actionable tools that you can use to become more creative. We welcome the author of The Creator Mindset, 92 Tools to Unlock the Secrets to Innovation, Growth, and Sustainability, Nir Bashan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Aidan. Thanks for having me.
I have a copy here behind me, as everybody knows, on the bookshelf. There's one up for grabs for you. Just sign up to the innovationshow.io newsletter and you will be in the hat to win a copy of that book. Let's get into it. We have a lot to cover today. Nir, before we jump in, let's set some context, because you say that we are all born with creativity. The spark most of us have extinguished as we grow older. This is a huge challenge for most of us. We lose that childlike creativity that we all are born with. And you say that spark must be relearned, because as adults we are told that creativity is not part and parcel of maturity. It's not serious business acumen. It's frivolous because it cannot be measured and it cannot be quantified. This is a huge challenge for creative people in the workplace.
Absolutely, Aidan. And you published with Wiley, your book's out there and it's doing really well. And this is a McGraw-Hill book, right? So you can't just say what you want in these books. As much as I really wanted to, I just wanted to put there, oh, I think this. And I went through the editing process and, it was just redlined and circled, defend this needs an attribution and all this stuff. So I was really forced to do the research. And what we found through talking with child psychologists at different prestigious universities, some hospitalists and just a wide body of knowledge, is that children, especially babies, are creative before language takes hold. And what ends up happening is that they're able to solve this, Cheerio in a bottle. They can get it out so that they can eat it before any kind of language, like give me the Cheerio or me want, anything like that takes hold. And so what you have is a hardwired system in every human being on earth that enables them to be creative as a problem-solving tool before anything else takes hold. Now, you're probably smarter than me, and you're like, well, Nir, that's great in the US and maybe in the UK or something. But what about in Angola or the Philippines or whatever? So I started to look, because I had the same question. I was like, maybe it's just a West thing. Oh, babies in the West are creative and whatever. And we found that it's categorically false, that babies, no matter where they are on planet Earth, right, from some of the highest socioeconomic levels to dirt poor poverty, are incredibly creative. It's a humanity thing. So I started to do some research and I found out that it's embedded, it's hardwired in us. And it takes a lot of effort to just squash it down and be a serious, mature adult. And that's the genesis of this book. The Creator Mindset is helping unlock people's creativity that they have deep within them, but they might not know that they have it.
The other thing you talk about that's so core is that many people think they're creative or they're not. They're right hemisphere orientated, they're left hemisphere orientated, and therefore they can't be creative. And the other thing, as I said there in the intro, one of the things is companies want creativity, but then when they have someone that's creative, they often reject them like a bad kidney transplant out of the organization. But one of the key facts is creativity can be learned, and that's your ultimate goal with this book.
So my mission in life is to help people become more creative, no matter what they do, from manufacturing to medicine. It doesn't matter what field you're in. I'm really there to help people learn the basic tools. And it's really about relearning them, right? Because we all kind of had them as children, and then we go to school and something happens along the way. We join the military, whatever it is that we do, we like get it squashed out of us. And then we go into the world, we start a business or we go to work somewhere, and we forget these amazing instinctual tools that we are all born with that can help us solve amazing, amazing problems. And part of it, to be honest with you, Aidan, is selfish. Because I want a better world. I want a better coffee maker than I have. My coffee maker sucks. I put in a little K-cup. I close the thing. I put in some water. Like, dude, really? Like, why do I have to put in? It should, it's 2022, man. It should be like futuristic. Do you remember when the Space Odyssey, when Stanley Kubrick's movie came out, like 2001, everyone was like, oh, 2001, there's going to be, we're going to fly and we could totally have been there. But why aren't we there? And why isn't the future there? It's because we're not acting on these creative impulses. We're not acting on creativity as a humanity. And what ends up happening is we all suffer because of that.
It's really fascinating. And yeah, I hope AI will be making our coffee pretty soon. And there's already a robotic barista in over your part of the world. There's a robotic barista that knows you as you come into the coffee house. It's like, oh no, there's Nir. I better make his coffee the way he likes it.
Make it right too, or else no tip.
But and the good thing is AI doesn't want a tip. It doesn't need. But and that's like our part of the world. Anybody who's worked waitressing over or has had Irish tourists, we're not great tippers when we go to the US. We don't understand that culture. Anyway, let's move on. I was thinking there's amazing serendipities happen when you have a podcast. You know what that's like. You run your own podcast as well, and we'll let people know at the end of today's show where to find that. Very simple, nirbashan.com, just for anybody who wants to jump in there right now. But one of the things I found so serendipitous about this was I'm currently reading, it's not a book, it's an oeuvre, the French word that means a body of work by a guy called Ian McGilchrist. And Ian's been a former guest on the show. It's an unbelievable book. It's like 3,000 pages long. It's massive. He's basically covered every aspect of the brain. And I've been reading that in the background, getting ready for a future episode, because I don't have the mental capacity to read it all in one go because there's so much, obviously. But then I was reading your book and I was like kind of going, this is so serendipitous, because Ian also has a former book called The Master and His Emissary. And it's about this ancient story of a master who sends an emissary, this person who represents him out into the world. And what it is about the right and left brain. And in Ian's world, the right brain is the master, and it sent out the left brain, which is the more analytical side, out into the world. But what's happened is the left brain then turns around and kind of goes, you know what? I can be running the show here. Screw the master. I'm the king here. And that's what's happened in the world. And this is very much a theme throughout your work, is we're living in this world where the left hemisphere dominates. It's an analytical, logical world, and that often quashes creativity. And this is what's happening in the business world.
Absolutely. And it's shocking. It's shocking how much money we're leaving on the table. So my whole thing is I help businesses become creative. I'm not an artist. I don't draw or paint or sculpt or dance. I mean, that's cool if you do that. That's fantastic. Like, some people love the arts, and I do too, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about creativity for practical purposes, for launching initiatives, for finding ways to increase profitability. I believe that the very engine of ingenuity, of business, of trade is one of the best things that we've come up with in the last 200 years, right? It has lifted more people out of poverty around the world than any other thing ever, right? Charity's been going on for 15,000 years or whatever. Since the dawn of man, there's been charity, 30,000 years. But has that lifted people out of poverty? No. There's all these, the church giving and all this stuff. Has that lifted people? No. What's lifting people out of poverty is the ability to work, to have purpose in life and a job, and the ability to contribute to their society through their goods, products, or services, right? That very thing is the driver of my message. And helping people become creative is incredibly important in the fabric of that environment, because when you are creative, you're able to say, oh, okay, let's look at this process a little differently. Here's an efficiency I can make. Here is a way that I can increase the profitability of what I'm doing, or increase the efficiency of my job, or whatever it is, so that I can contribute to society on a much higher level. Yeah, I agree, Aidan. We have a shocking lack of creativity in modern business. We have the brain that is being almost overwhelmed by one side of the analytics side, just squashing down the creative side. And we end up with a world that's like that, not that great, it's just not that fun. And when we start to say, okay, the analytics are important to some degree, but what we really do is we start to balance out the two, then we're golden, right? So there's a lot of books out there that say, throw away the analytics and take off your clothes and go into the forest and light a fire and smoke a lot of dope. It's like, I don't think that's a good idea at all, right? I think life, humanity, if you look at it carefully, and I've studied this stuff kind of because I had to, not because I wanted to, but because I had to, right? I've studied all this stuff, and I found that balance is one of nature's most elusive goals, right? It's one of the most difficult yet amazing places that anybody can be in, from a physiological, biological perspective, all the way to a work perspective and a career perspective. So what we need to do is, we're like 90-10, right? We're 90% analytics, 10% creativity. And we need to just try to balance it out 50-50. If we're able to balance out our mind and our efforts and our ingenuity, our productivity, the profit that we can generate from the revenues in our product or service, if we could just be balanced, Aidan, the world is going to instantly be a better place. And we need more voices out there to push this narrative, to say it's okay to be balanced. It's okay to take a risk on a creative idea. It's okay to try to, level the playing field so that good ideas can get out there into the world.
And we are going to cover some of the ways you can do that to balance the right and left hemisphere. One of the examples you give, and I just wanted to map what we were talking about there to a concrete example, and one that makes sense when you hear it, but is often overlooked in the story of Apple and the resurgence of Steve Jobs back into Apple. You mentioned this in the book, was if you think of any organization, originally they're created from the creative mindset, the creator mindset, the right brain. But then as the organization matures, the left takes over and it becomes, we need to protect what we've already created. We need to now milk the cash cow as much as possible. And as a result, the right gets quashed again. And that's what happened with Apple. Jobs was ejected. And yes, he may have not been a great leader, and hopefully he learned a lot during his period of exile. But when he came back, the way Apple wanted to fix the organization before was with the left, as you say. And this is what many organizations do: redundancies, layoffs, product closures, etc., instead of leaning into the right hemisphere again, into the creator mindset and saving companies that way. I'd love you to take us through this.
Yeah, definitely. I talk about it when I'm out doing keynotes, and I could literally see people's eyes roll. Right. I'm like, Apple. And then I could see people like, oh God, not another Apple story. Please, not another. But here's the story, right? Basically, Steve Jobs got kicked out of Apple, his own company. And Apple was in deep dookie because they put out the Newton before. It's like the pre-iPad. The Newton didn't do well. And so they were losing money left and right. And the company was hanging on by a lifeline. And what ended up happening with analytics took over, just like you said, Aidan. It was, oh, if we're in deep trouble, what we're going to do is we're going to do layoffs and restructuring, which is like restructuring is the most BS term ever, right? It's like literally. So they did restructuring, whatever that means, layoffs and all of this stuff, and none of it worked. Why? Because when we do analytics only, they'll never work. I talk with companies all over the world, man. It's my life's work. I promise you, I've documented case studies in the thousands of companies that start off with some kind of innovation and then they level off because they're like, we got to protect it. We can't do anything else. Oh, what worked yesterday will work tomorrow. In every single case and every single company ever started on Earth, if there isn't continual innovation, there is decay and death. It is guaranteed that if you don't continually change, innovate, adapt, kind of be in the moment with the consumer, or if you're B2B, be in the moment with the buyer, then something will always crash and burn. So the same thing happened to Apple. They were on analytics only in Apple, right? Out of all companies. And so Steve Jobs got bought back in at the 11th hour. And he said, I've got an idea, let's get creative. And they're like, no, you can't do this. So he was like, listen, this is the idea. This is what I think we should do. We're going to go talk to Bill Gates. Bill Gates. It's a little known story, by the way. We're going to talk to Bill Gates and we're going to ask him for a loan. And people were like, absolutely not. And then the lawyers got a hold of it and they were like, no, never. You can't do that because of this and that. And here are all the rules of why you can't do it. And here are all the things that will expose the company. They will expose the company to lawsuits and all of this stuff. And, we can't do that. And then he was like, okay, fine. So he literally got his cell phone out, called him at home. And he's like, yeah, the history between those two. It's a pretty long history. Anyway, he's like, come on over. And the details of what happened are lost to history, right? Because we lost Steve Jobs and now, Bill Gates ain't talking about it. But basically what came out of that meeting was a loan. Microsoft gave Apple a loan to keep him in business. And there's one interview that we were able to locate, one interview. In some magazine, I don't know, one of the researchers found it for my book. And basically what Bill Gates said was that he didn't dive into any details, but what he did say was that having any competitor that pushed Microsoft to be better was worthwhile as a goal and worthwhile to humanity. So he realized, Bill Gates also got incredibly creative. He realized that having somebody to compete with and somebody that pushed them in the marketplace was incredibly valuable. And that is how a creative idea saved Apple. You think it's a product or something like that? Absolutely not. It was literally a creative way to look at a business problem, asking for a loan from somebody, your worst adversary. And that is where creativity was actually born.
I'd love to talk about that later on, because later on in the book, you talk about complacency and the complacency conundrum that so many people have. But this to me makes sense, because I worked in a legacy organization, a government organization, not for very long, by the way. As I said, ejected like a bad kidney transplant is an understatement for anybody that's creative in a place like that. But the reason I say that is when they're bailed out by the government all the time, when they have no commercial remit, the creativity atrophies in a place like that. And we need environmental pressure. And environmental pressure in nature is, survival of the fittest or the most collaborative. And that came to mind when I read about this story you brought to life here. So that was one thing that I thought was really, really important to understand. But I wanted to now at this time, I thought we'd infuse some of the great exercises you give. And you say that we don't need to learn to be creative. We need to relearn to be creative, like you talked about earlier on. We're born that way. And one of the great exercises that you offer, and I'd love you to take us through this, is that for anybody who has a challenge that's keeping them awake at night, or something that's like a buzzing fridge in the back of their mind, they can do something about it. And this leans into everything you talk about in the book. I'd love you to take us through this, Nir.
Definitely. So I talk a lot in the book about one of the 92 tools is writing stuff down. Okay. It sounds really dumb and maybe like, oh, whatever. How is that going to increase my creativity? But what happens is when you write something down, you trigger a different element of your brain than just thinking about it. Okay. It's been studied. I've referenced it in the book. Basically, what happens is when you have a thought, it stays in a certain realm of the brain that deals with, emotion and different sort of, judgment thoughts, stuff like that. Should I do this? Should I not? Do I prioritize it? Do I go to the bathroom right now? I mean, it's stuff like that. That's where your idea stays. You don't want your good idea to stay in the realm of, should I go to the bathroom now? Or am I hungry? Or do I want some water? Right? That's not where you want a great idea to sit, but that's where it sits. That part of the brain, it sits in that part of the brain. And so what ends up happening is it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. So when you grab a pen and a paper, or a pencil, whatever, and you write down that idea, it transforms it from that part of the brain that deals with emotional decision making to a action item decision point. So you write stuff down as it comes up, and it is an incredibly powerful creative tool. What you end up doing is we talk about kind of the second level of writing stuff down, which is the waterfall in the book. And the waterfall is basically an exercise where you sit down and you start writing stuff out, regardless of whether it makes sense or not. You just pen and paper, pencil or whatever in hand, and you just start writing stuff as it comes to your mind. And what ends up happening is you might write, 95%, just pure crap that you'll never use again. But there might be a nugget in there at some point that is incredibly important, right? And the pressure that we put on ourselves to come up with that nugget, right, might be, okay, Nir, I'll do the waterfall and then I'll just sit there and wait because I'm trying to challenge myself and, trying to come up with the idea. The greatest battle that we ever have in humanity, the greatest power is not, war or a bomb or somebody. People always think of huge, powerful things as being something like that, but they're not. They're the battle between you and yourself, right? They're the battle between you allowing or not allowing an idea to come out. It's that internal battle that it takes away any ability to come up with a good and decent creative idea. So what I recommend is people do that writing exercise, and literally you don't care what you put on the page. Sometimes it'll be good, sometimes it won't. What you do is you do that waterfall and then you put it away somewhere. You wait a day and then you come back to it. If you look at it right away, not good. If you look at it in an hour, not good. You're still accessing the part of the brain that deals with short-term memory. There's all kinds of studies on it. Don't do it. Put it away. Come back the next day and then look at it. And then when you look at it the next day, you go, oh, I didn't even think of that. Or some gobbledygook that nobody will trigger something in you to go, what a cool idea. That is the way that I'm going to deal with my, cash flow situation. That is the way that I'm going to get net 30 instead of net 45 on the payments from, those guys who owe me money all the time. And I'm like, trying to float different things around so that I can pay people and the vendors and all this stuff. That's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm going to approach the problem. You've solved it already for yourself because you've allowed yourself just a little bit of freedom to explore.
You've written a book, so you know what this is like, where when you're writing, you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like kind of going, I have an idea, and you write it down because it's coming from a different part of your brain. And as you say, you're writing this all day, so it's constantly marinating in your brain the whole time. We had a brilliant guest on the show a couple of times, a lady called Anne Janzer, who's written brilliant books, writing to be understood, etc. They're brilliant books. But she has a great way of thinking of this, and I thought I'd share it with you because it matches beautifully to what you talk about. She said the right and left brain are like the muse and the scribe. So the scribe is very analytical. It wants to get all the spelling right and get it all correct. But the muse is like, just get it out there, just write whatever comes to mind, etc. And there's this constant battle between the muse and the scribe. And unfortunately for most people, they let the scribe win the master and the emissary once again. But I wanted to move on because I thank you for sharing that. And there's a great thing you share next, and you call it the trinity of creativity. And this is about innovation because, as you know, many times you work with organizations and a CEO or leader might go, I need more innovation. I need more innovative people in my organization. But that is often not the problem really in the organization. Again, as you tell us, this can be learned. And you call this the trinity of creativity. The 3 points that you talk about that make up the trinity are the concept, the idea, and the execution. And Nir, if you're all right, will I share the diagram and maybe you can talk over that diagram?
Of course.
Okay, I'm going to throw this up on the screen, and then we'll let our audience see it for those people who are watching us on YouTube. And we'll have a bit of empathy, as you talk about, is a really important skill also for people who are just listening to us.
Yeah, definitely. So the concept and the idea and the execution are basically the ingredients that build creativity. This is the factory. This is the how to make creativity. There are tons of books and webinars and courses and all this stuff out there that talk about why you should be creative. If you want that, do not buy my book. It's not the why. The why has been done to death. Who cares about the why? Tell me how to do it. I need to do it now. I've got deadlines. This is a practical thing, right? So this is a very practical tool. What you do is you get a pen and a piece of paper, right? And you write down the word concept, idea, and execution, okay? And you start with the execution. The execution is going to be some kind of SKU, right? It is your direct product or your direct service or whatever. So in the book, we talk about a pizza company. I worked with a food service company, and this is where the example came from. And basically, the CEO and the C-suite was like, well, we need to sell more pizza. That was their thing. So let's get creative and innovative and to sell more pizza. It's like, okay, cool. That's a decent idea, but that means nothing. It means nothing. There's no action items from saying, let's get more innovative. Let's get more creative. Okay, great. Well, what are we going to do to sell more pizza? Silence, right? So, okay, let's find a way to build the how. So their execution was that their bestseller was the double crust, cheesy crust, medium, whatever, garlic pizza. I can't remember what it was, but it was something like that. And I was like, okay, guys, now that is your electron microscope view of that SKU, right? That is what you put out the door and people pay you for, and it is an execution of your company. I said, okay, let's start looking at the idea. What is the larger level, right? So now we're looking at the electron microscope, we get the execution, right? That's like we can see the atoms and stuff moving around, right? But now let's look at the idea, which is the street level view, right? What you could see with your eyes. What are we seeing in the business at that view? And, the executives and stuff were like, well, basically what we're seeing is, pizza, Nir. We're seeing, that's what we do. We're a pizza place. I said, I know, but go a little bit bigger. Start to think, what is the idea behind this thing? And they said, well, it's kind of, it's food. That's what we're doing. I said, is it really food? Is it the same as Japanese food and stuff like that? And then people started going, well, no, this is comfort food. I was like, yes, now we're getting somewhere. By the way, Aidan, when you run this yourself for your business, you're going to get different results because this explores that childhood DNA that's in your soul, right? It is literally locked into part and parcel of who you are. And companies are very much like people, right? And this particular company started with, grandma came over from Sicily in 1892 or whatever with a certain recipe. And that DNA is still in the brand. So it's about unlocking the DNA that's already there in the brand and finding ways to manipulate it creatively. I said, okay, cool. So that's the idea. What's the concept? And then again, they were like, it's comfort food. We're pizza. Who cares? That's what we do. I said, give me the satellite and space view, right? Everything, the wide view. What is the fabric that makes this company different than others? And, somebody said grandma came over with the pizza recipe, the sauce recipe and all this stuff. And basically somebody in the room said, and I'll never forget this, They're like, Nir, there are people in the US who get a pizza from us every day at 6 o'clock. And it's literally their only contact with humanity because they have a relationship with the drivers. They love the drivers. We literally, if it wasn't for us, they would starve. And I'm like, that's crazy. So is that for real? They're like, oh yeah, that 100% different markets and stuff, no matter where it is. There are customers that order from us every day. I said, okay, so what are you guys really doing? What is the huge view, the concept? And they're like, well, we're kind of in the sustenance business, right? We an incredibly good deal. You get a lot of food. You can feed a family, and we're very proud of that. We're very proud of the fact that we've kept the prices just right, that we could feed, a lot of people for a decent amount. And that's kind of the business. I said, okay, cool. So your concept is sustenance. Your idea is comfort food, and your execution is pizza, or at least, the double crust meat lovers, whatever, medium. And they're like, yeah, great. We've done that. We've wasted a week. We've paid you for it. Now what? And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I get it. But now comes the fun part. So I want everybody to look at the medium level, the idea, and start to come up with different ideas that have to do with comfort food. And they were like, well, what about comfort? When I think of comfort food, I think of chicken soup. So I made everybody get a piece of paper out. We wrote it down, and somebody wrote down chicken soup. And I was like, great, guys, what else? And then they slowly but surely did the work themselves. Aidan, I don't want to be there as augmented staff. I want to do a couple weeks with them, maybe a month, get everybody really excited, get everybody focused on how to innovate, and then leave it. It's not, I don't want to be your augmented staff. I want you to be able to be empowered to come up with the ideas yourself. So after I did that, and they started to map out new products, right? Originally, the goal from the C-suite was, we need to sell more pizza. And what they got was different products. So I'm really proud to have been part of the, calzone thing. That was a new product that came out of this exact consultation service, because it was something that was a derivative of comfort food, but not exactly pizza, and it gave them a new offering. It's brilliant. I didn't come up with it. They did. It's their brand. I can't go in and tell you, Aidan, this is what you need to be doing in your business, or go to your listeners and say, you need a calzone pizza, and collect a check. I don't know. You have to explore the brand. You have to relearn how to think creatively in order to come up with these different ideas. And the funny story is the chicken soup that they came up with, a chain here in the US called Chick-fil-A released the chicken soup almost 3 years ago. And everyone's like, totally off brand, man. Look, you're a chicken sandwich place. Chick-fil-A's chicken sandwiches and fried chicken, by the way, and fries. That's their core thing. They have 4 things on the menu. Right? Then they added the chicken soup. Everyone's like, oh, it's going to be a failure. It's one of the most popular products. People go in there to get chicken soup. Who knew? It's not even fried. It's like, grilled chicken soup in a thing, and it's delicious. So the point being is that the DNA of your product or service is sitting there with latent potential to grow, latent potential to scale, latent potential to increase profitability and increase revenue. It is up to you in your business, or even in your career, to explore and exploit that very, very DNA in order to grow the company, in order to meet your goals, in order to maximize effectiveness. No matter what it is that you do, it is right there for the taking. You just have to learn how to do it.
It reminds me of a great show we did. This is a long time ago. It's pre-pandemic, with a brilliant guy called A.K. Pradeep, and he wrote a book called AI for Marketing and Product Innovation. But he was talking about something similar to you, where it was funny because you talk about these limitations we have, where, for example, Harriet, a lady 100,000 years old, who can teach us these things about the negativity bias we naturally have because we were hunted like animals not so long ago in the human evolution, in the evolution of the brain. But I wanted to just mention this with AK Pradeep. He used AI and combined it with a team and a Nir, so a facilitator, and they all worked together, including the AI. And the AI scanned social media they were trying to find a new flavor of ice cream. And what they noticed through the AI was the AI had picked up that a lot of people talked about ice cream at breakfast time. And that was thrown into the ether and marinated in everybody's minds. And then one of the team over lunch was like going, what if we used the milk from the cereal from breakfast to make ice cream? And that became an absolute killer product for the same reasons you're talking about there. Because probably if somebody said that, it would be kind of going judgmental and kind of going, I don't want them to have a win because then I don't look so good, the scarcity mentality, etc. So I want to just put that there, and I'd love you to unpack these things. And then the next was that this negativity bias we naturally have. Like you, I run workshops all the time, sometimes ideation workshops or brainstorming. And what I find is if you start with, give me all the reasons this won't work, you'll fill the walls with Post-it notes and, everything negative why it won't work. And then you're like kind of going like you with the pizza guys, what will work? And then it's like, and it's quiet and it's silence. And that is baked into our brain, and we need to overcome that. And this is a huge part of your work, is all this work, all these exercises that you offer in the book can help us break that negativity.
I talk about it all the time. So we've done some deep studying here, right? And we looked at the English language. And the English language is a very interesting language, because if you look at it carefully, you'll see that there is almost a 6-to-1 ratio of bad words to good words. Okay? 6-to-1. Isn't that crazy? So for every positive or fun or nice word, there is 6 negative words. Crap, sucks, not fun, not great, horrible, terrible. There's so many more bad words. And I figured, it's kind of an English phenomenon, right? Because, the UK is kind of, I don't know, it's dreary, right? Most of the year it rains. It's kind of like, ugh. So it's an English thing, it comes with describing the environment. That was my theory, right? Of the British Isles. I thought like, okay, cool. I got that one. It's English only. So then I said, you know what? But like, in order to put this thing in a published book, you have to actually do the research. So I was like, okay, I'll do the research. So I had my team go out and look. I think it's something like 26 different languages, all over the world, picked at random. And we found that the same thing exists in every single language on earth. Now, sometimes the ratio is 5-to-1, sometimes it's like 10-to-1 in some languages, but we found it in every corner of the globe. And so what's really important here is choosing your words incredibly careful and always trying to align on the side of positivity. What ends up happening is when you choose to reject the negative words and you choose to instead frame these problems that you're having at work in some kind of positive way, the ability to solve that problem, the ability for creativity to take hold multiplies automatically just by your selection of words. It's amazing. So really, when something goes wrong at work, you could say it sucks. This is terrible. This is not great. It's a horrible, setback, and all these language words that we have to describe something going awry or off the rails or whatever. Instead of choosing to do that, you can choose to look at it with some kind of positivity. And when you do that, you automatically inspire creativity just by your word selection. Now, Aidan, I know that you have a huge background in entrepreneurship and you've owned companies and stuff like that. And I've hired, and me too, right? So I've been in business a long time for myself. I started when I was 9 years old, going door to door, washing cars. And I had a little car business when I was in, 4th grade. On the weekend, we would go out and and help people wash their cars. It was amazing. I had like a couple of kids from the neighborhood, and I would take a percentage. It was awesome. But the point being is that I've hired 1,000 people roughly. Actually, it's a little more than that over my career. And I've noticed that every time you hire somebody, there is a direct correlation between their language and their success. Okay. So if they are like a positive sort of minded person, even if they're faking it, doesn't even matter. But if they choose to describe things positively, they're C-suite level today, right? People I've hired as juniors are now running companies, and I'm like, can I do a keynote for you guys? You know, that's our relationship now. But basically, that's what I found over that many years. Like you said earlier, Aidan, any asshole can tell you why something is bad. Anybody can do it, right? We can fill a room. We are naturally disposed to the negative parts of life. Why? Because we used to get eaten by beasts far stronger than us. And, you know, we were in caves and everybody was a threat. We were so weak, right? We didn't have those things that were this big and the strength of the claws that these other animals had. And yeah, things were negative. People would die at like 20. You were a grandma at like age 14. I mean, you know, this is how bad things used to be for humanity. But something happened to our early man and woman. And what happened was that we learned how to get creative. We used our brains to enable survival. And then because we used our brains to enable survival, we transcended from mere animals to the society that we have today. So yes, positivity is incredibly important. And the language that we use in day-to-day work is paramount in order to become more creative. Something your listeners can do right now, right? They're listening. They're like, okay, that's kind of cool, but it's theoretical. How am I going to ever apply that? Emails, right? You send, how many emails a day do you send? I send hundreds, right? It's like tracking this, talking with the staff, making sure that we got paid on this invoice. And, you know, it's hundreds of things back and forth. Are you the kind of guy or gal that sends an email that says, you know, thanks, have this in by noon? Or are you the person who says, hi, Aidan, hope you're doing well. Nice to catch up with you. If you can, please check in on this invoice. We've been tracking it for a while. It's kind of important because of these reasons, comma, your name. Or you send like one-liners, like tracking, must have this by tomorrow, please. Or you don't even say please. And, you know, so just next time you sit down to send an email, you make a choice. You make a choice every day in life as to how you want to approach a particular situation, how you want to approach a vendor, how you want to approach your boss. It doesn't really matter. Take 2 extra seconds to put the person's name, for God's sakes, put the person's name and ask them how they're doing. You don't know. They might have gotten hit by a bus. You don't know, man. There's so much that happens to people that is hard for them to deal with, or wonderful. Maybe their kid just graduated and they had a wonderful celebration, or maybe somebody just got diagnosed with some horrible things. Why are you the person that is looking at just perpetuating that negativity when you could take an extra second in your emails, in your next email, and put, hi, Aidan, hope this message finds you well, because you genuinely do, and say, you know, hey, we're checking in on this invoice. Let me know when you get a chance. Your return rate on those emails and your response rate, the engagement rate will go through the roof, rather than sending a quick one-liner and being kind of a negative Nelly. So I urge your listeners and people watching us right now, that positivity, just start an email and you will see an amazing transformation within hours, because you'll get people responding like, oh yeah, you know, had a nice weekend. My son graduated school or whatever. And you get that amazing humanity back that you will never, ever get with negativity.
I'm so happy you brought that up, man. It's when I was retiring from sport, from a career in sport, I mistakenly thought everybody was educated in business writing, et cetera. And when I joined the company, I was an intern. I was 31, an intern. My language was all like that, you know, very well laid out emails. I didn't spend time on it, but it became the way I wrote emails. But what I found, back to your point, is about the language. I didn't know that about the mismatch of negative to positive words. But when you use that positive language to others, it reflects you. It actually changes how your brain also thinks. A way I noticed this with myself was I studied in Germany and France. And when I speak French and German. When I was in Germany and people go, wie geht's, which means how are you? I'd go nicht schlecht, which means not bad, because that's what we'd say in Ireland. Predominantly, I used to say, you go, how's it going? I go, not bad.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And then because it was in a different language, they'd kind of go, that's not the usual response. And they'd be kind of looking at me. And then I went to France after Germany, and they were like, ça va, which is how is it going? And I go, pas mal, which means not bad. And again, that fact that I was out of the normal environment exposed it to me. And I went, oh my God. And then I just changed it forever going forward. And people go, how are you going? I go, fantastic. Right. And even when I'm not feeling great, because then it actually makes me feel better.
Isn't that amazing?
Amazing. And the other thing was, I loved what you said about the people. And you talk about that later on in the book, the importance of people to build an organization and be more creative in the organization. I do some executive coaching, and I also run programs for organizations for new hires. And one of the things I tell them, and they're always shocked, and I wait till the end, I say, I've noticed with your emails X, Y, and Z. So how you're communicating creates a brand in the other person's head of who you are. And it has such a dramatic effect, because we all know what it's like to receive that email from somebody that's just like, you're an afterthought to them. Yeah. And they're treating you like a machine. And again, it goes right back to what you talked about, the left brain, the dominating, analytical, logical brain, mechanistic, is dominating much of the world today. I thought we'd cover one more thing, because we're going to do 2 parts. Nir has kindly offered to do 2 parts with us. We're going to take a break, and we're both doing them on the same day. So we're going to take a break, get a coffee, have a mental amuse-bouche, and we'll come back and we'll do part 2. But I'd love to whet our audience's appetite about some of the 12 principles that you pepper the book with. And you highlight throughout the book these principles, 3 of which come together and are so important. One I mentioned earlier on, which was empathy. The other 2 that go with empathy are humor and courage. And this is a trio that works well across the principle of 12 principles that are throughout the book. I'd love you to tell us about these: humor, empathy, and courage.
There's nothing I get more emails about from around the world at this book than those 3 things, because people are like, really? Those are the 3 most important things? They're like, humor's not important. Like, people love, I think, with social media, Aidan, like, people love to say why you're wrong, right? This goes back to this negativity thing. If you look at most threads, and I think it's human nature, right? There's something about social media that separates the humanity from the human. Right. And you're able to tell somebody, oh, you're a jerk online 100 times easier than you would be in person. Right. 100 times easier. So people, because of that degree of separation, want to say, Nir, empathy is okay, fine, it's important, but humor, who cares? Right. Courage is like whatever, but those for me are the foundational things. And I'll tell you why. Humor opens up is an incredibly complex thing, right? And what it does is it allows you to look at a situation in a different way. The very nature of humor is creative, because for something to be funny, your brain has to sort of, combine several things that are usually one way, and the joke is that it makes it a different way. Now, I'm not saying go off and, tell crude jokes or something like that, and you're going to do great in your career. But I am saying that a well-timed humorous moment, or actively looking for the humor and the folly in life, is a wonderful, wonderful business tool. At the end of the day, who cares? Right? Literally, we're all going to die anyway. And that problem about selling more pizza has very little to do with humanity, in general. So that, to me, is really, really funny that we spend most of our lives and so much effort on things that are in general pretty damn trivial. Right. And that is a kind of a funny thing that humans are so inclined to spend so much time on things that don't matter and so little time on things that do matter that, there has to be an outlet of humor. The other cool thing is it's a stress reliever, right? So if you're deep down, you're in the laser focused view of some problem going on in your business or in your career, you need a valve to kind of like let some of that stuff go. And if you can find a creative, funny way or humorous way to look at that, then you're really, really in good shape. Empathy, incredibly important. The ability of humans to relate to each other is the foundation of business, period. I don't care what it is that you do or how incredibly technologically advanced your product or service is. I've talked to people in the Valley about this, and they're like, "Well, Nir, we're an AI company. AI is amazing. It's going to take over the world, man." And I'm like, "Yeah, cool. Yeah. What's AI based on?" They're like, "Well, incredibly complex, man." Okay, at its base, what is it? Well, it's intelligence. Okay, what's intelligence come from? Well, humans. Oh shit! Wow. Ooh. Like so. At the bottom line is that all of these things are wonderful, but having a connection, an empathetic connection to your fellow coworkers, to your customer, to your vendors or your suppliers is an incredibly important tool. So we talk a lot about how to improve empathy. And finally, having the courage, you need to have some courage to take a risk on an idea that most people do not. And we talk a lot in the book about, and I talk about in my keynotes and workshop about people in different fields from medicine to engineering who have said, you know what, the status quo is this. I'm going to look at it in a different way. And instantly they get shut down. Just like you said, Aidan, when you went to work at the government organization, you were the creative one and it was just friction from the get-go. And there's a reason for that. And there's a way to alleviate that friction too. And it takes a lot of courage and individualism and sometimes collectivism and going with a team. But that is a corner keystone of getting innovation out, getting innovation to move forward. So those three things are incredibly important. And I'd be happy to get an email from you telling me that it's not.
There's a challenge. And it's a great way to finish today's show on the topic of courage. In case anybody misses episode 2, the follow-on part 2 of this episode, Nir, where can people find you in order to find out? Because you're very generous with tools that you offer, diagnostics, etc. And also for people interested in getting in touch with you for keynotes and workshops, where can they find you?
So I'm on nirbashan.com, nirbashan.com. If you Google Nir Bashan, there's 2 of us, or 3 of us in the entire world. So you'll find me. I'm really easy to find. There's a kid uploading like Call of Duty clips. That's not me. I wish I had that time. Can you imagine? Like, how cool would that be? Like playing video games and uploading it to YouTube. He gets more clicks than me. It's amazing. This kid, he uploads and then he gets, people watch. It's like, I don't know. I don't get it. Do you get it, Aidan?
I don't, man. I also have that challenge with the length of the show. So covering content and going deep in the show. You know this because you run podcasts and you have a much less volume because it's not your podcast as well. So the attention span for people has got less and less, which is a huge challenge to deep thinking and creativity because creating the right environment, as you know well, is so important to become creative in the first place. So I have the same challenge, but I'm sticking to my guns, man. And, as I feel, and I genuinely feel this with this show, it's an absolute privilege and it's learning from great people every week with witnesses. So it's like having a security camera on. Luckily the quality is getting better.
Your catalog runs to the who's who. I mean, seriously, it's one of the better shows that if you look on your website and go to episodes and stuff, I mean, that's pretty much, I don't know, what do you have? Like the top 10% of thought leaders on earth? Like you have people from everywhere. I think it's so cool. And I spend some time listening to the episodes because I want to learn stuff. So you're doing, it's a real service.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And I genuinely mean it. There's a selfishness there as well. Like you said, you want to create a better planet. Likewise here. And I think one of the ways to do this is give information that will help people make better decisions so they can lead better lives through better companies that can get, offer sustainability properly to the planet and give back, etc. It's an absolute pleasure talking to you, man. I really enjoyed it. And I look forward to part 2. We're going to record that pretty soon. We're going to take a little break. What I might do is actually release both of these back to back if I can get the time to edit them back to back. And for those who want to join us in part 2, we're going to cover the other tools, the other principles to help you become more creative and adopt the creator mindset. For now, author of The Creator Mindset, 92 Tools to Unlock the Secrets of Innovation, Growth, and Sustainability, Nir Bashan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir. See you soon.
Just before we wrap up and prepare for part 2 at Nir Bashan, I want to thank our sponsor, Zai, boldly transforming the future of financial services with a suite of embedded products and services, enabling businesses to create multiple payment workflows and move funds with ease. You can check out Zai at hellozai.com, and I'll see you very soon for part 2 of The Creator Mindset with Nir Bashan.